From Rixie, this is Frameform, a podcast discussing movies, moving, and everything in between. I'm Hannah Weber.
I'm Jen Ray.
And I'm Claire Schweitzer. And we are three dance film nerds who can't wait to take you on a deep dive into the crazy, complex, and exciting world at the intersection of dance and film.
Over the next few months, we'll be delving into topics, trends, and issues in dance, film, and culture at large.
We will also be sharing conversations with creators in the field, what inspires them, and the challenges they face when making their work.
Always relevant,
fresh each week,
and on demand.
Frameform, the sixth podcast from Rixie, premiering August 12th. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From Rixie, this is Debuff, and I'm your host, Steve Skeels. Today I'll be talking about the Star Citizen roadmap, Halo Infinite multiplayer, QuakeCon schedule, an update on Anthem's loot, and the Nintendo leaks. Star Citizen is pretty much the most infamous crowdfunded game I can think of. What initially sounded like a huge multiplayer space simulation led by a strong team has devolved into a development nightmare. In June 2020, it passed $300 million USD raised and is one of the largest crowdfunding projects ever. It got so big they even split it off into two projects, the MMO game Star Citizen and the single-player experience titled Squadron 42. After 8 years since the Kickstarter launch and multiple delays, there still isn't a whole lot to show for either game. Recently, there have only been a few real updates on the game, and there's really been a lack of transparency overall. Most recently, backers outraged at an update from the developer Cloud Imperium Gaming. This was essentially a roadmap for a development roadmap. In March, they had pretty much said that the current roadmap didn't accurately show the development of the game, and it's taken 4 months for them to come out and say that they want to try to clear things up. But instead of actually clearing it up, they've said that they're going to slowly share progress on the actual roadmap that they're developing, starting with an explanation of their goals and what to expect, followed by the development of the roadmap itself, until they're actually prepared to release it. I'd expect this would probably take over a month based on how they laid it out, but there's many people speculating that it could potentially take until the end of the year. What's worse about all this is that Squadron 42 was originally supposed to release in 2016, and after multiple delays, it was expected to go into beta at the end of 2020. Based on this, it's pretty unlikely for that to happen. I do understand that the beta was, I believe, said it was to be an internal beta, but either way, that's still pretty disappointing. Many have obviously been wondering what's going on. I mean, how can you get $300 million to make a game and deliver almost nothing over a decade? It sucks because the concept of the game is really cool, and I won't say they've been doing nothing, but it's apparently been horribly mismanaged and presumably destroyed by scope creep. Whatever is happening, this is the reason people are hesitant to back crowdfunded projects. Obviously, this is worse than most, but giving your money to something that may never come out is the risk that you have to take on. And even if that is how it's going to end up, I think people are most upset about the lack of transparency. They want to know what's going on, whether that's good or bad. They've committed their money and they want to stay in the loop, but unfortunately that's just not happening here. I always like the idea of backing games you want to see get made and being able to feel like you're involved in the development cycle. Let's hope for the sake of the backers that things turn around and we do get some more information, but I really doubt if we'll see this game release anytime soon. It sounds really cool, and it's a game that I think a lot of people would like to play, but right now we really don't know how long it's going to take. And after 8 years, I would assume it's going to take a lot longer since they really haven't shown a whole lot this far. Via the official Halo Twitter account, it was confirmed that Halo Infinite's multiplayer will be free to play and support 120 frames per second on the Xbox Series X. This was initially leaked by UK retailer Smith's Toys when a description claiming this was posted for the game. It was said that more information will be shared later on, so there isn't a lot of confirmed information we can go on, but there is an Xbox leaker by the name of Clobril who tweeted out in response to the Smith's Toys leak. The user stated that the game will also include a battle pass system similar to something like Fortnite, and new customization options. Also, that it will be huge, which is no surprise based on what we've seen so far. There are also rumors that Infinite would not launch with multiplayer, since there hasn't really been anything shown for the game yet, and first look we got was only single-player content. People have been speculating on what the actual state of the game is, so of course, people immediately go to the fact that maybe there's not going to be any multiplayer. But this was denied by 343 community director Brian Gerard. We can expect the game with multiplayer to launch alongside the Xbox Series X this holiday. When asked about the potential for a multiplayer beta, as has been done in the past for Halo games, 343 said that they hope to have a chance for something like this, but they are not sure what is possible. I'm hoping that they do something with maybe a multiplayer beta for a small window, as that would be a good chance to get back some of the fans who didn't enjoy 343's previous Halo titles. I'm also interested in what their free-to-play strategy is. With Game Pass, I'd assume that Microsoft doesn't care much about people actually buying the game anymore. So this might be a good way to both draw new players in who maybe aren't subscribed to Game Pass yet, as well as get some extra money with something like a Battle Pass system. It could be a good move for them. Even though people love Halo's story, I know people who play first-person shooters pretty much just for multiplayer, so I imagine this will easily draw in that crowd as well, if it's free. I just hope that there isn't any further monetary investment necessary for the game, with anything outside of maybe cosmetics. Cosmetics could be pretty useful in Halo since everyone loves the different armor you can get for the Spartans, so I could see them monetizing that. But I really hope that if they're going free to play for the multiplayer, they keep it how it normally is, you get it, and that's all you need. Maybe some DLC for maps, but we'll see how it goes. Bethesda just announced the full schedule for this year's QuakeCon, which will be a live stream at-home event. QuakeCon originally started back in 1996 to celebrate games like Quake and Doom. As time went on, it added more franchises owned by id Software and the parent company ZeniMax, who also owns Bethesda and some other studios. Now it's basically an overall ZeniMax convention. They still have Quake and Doom tournaments, so it does have its original purpose, but it's also turned into an event for fans of their franchises to tune in. Something like BlizzCon does the same. With it being an at-home event this year, it's going to be a bit different, but they're still promising some competition along with a pretty extensive list of panels. It will be live streamed on Twitch and will run this weekend, from August 7th to the 9th, starting at noon Eastern Time on the 7th. If you look at the schedule, it pretty much has something going on every few hours, all the way from basically, noon on the 7th, all the way till the 10 p.m. Eastern Time on the 9th. I find this to be a pretty ridiculous lineup, and for anyone actually interested in all their games represented here, it's going to be impossible to keep up with. Obviously, you can get some recaps later, but this is still pretty crazy. It's got everything that you would probably expect, starting with interviews with game creators, panels on all kinds of topics about their games, and of course competitions, which will range from cosplay to Fallout 76 camps to the actual Quake Championship. Overall, I think it looks like a good time if you're fans of these games. I do think some will be disappointed though, as this year only has one Quake event, and overall not a ton of id Software representation outside of Doom Eternal. There's a lot of Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online events going on, and while I know those games definitely have their audience, it's a bit different than the standard content that people would probably come to QuakeCon for. It feels like over half of their representation is basically their MMO games. Also, while I wouldn't typically expect big announcements at QuakeCon, the lack of E3 this year would make this a good place for Bethesda to talk about new games, such as Starfield, which we still don't really know anything about. However, they don't have anything on the schedule that would be a good place for announcements other than the opening ceremony, which might still be a good place to announce something, but I don't think I'd get my hopes up. I do want them to release something here, but I don't think that you should tune in hopes of any of that. Just come watch QuakeCon if there's any of the games you're interested in, maybe check out a few of the panels, but I don't think there's going to be anything big this year. At this point, I think anybody that pays attention to gaming news knows that Anthem did not turn out how many people were hoping, and certainly was not how BioWare or EA wanted the game to be received. But instead of abandoning the game, BioWare has been keeping at it. Back in February, they announced that they would be putting the game's next season on hold in order to redesign the game itself. Now on July 31st, we've got our first true update on some of the specific design aspects they want to fix in order to improve the game, and it all starts with the loot. In any looter shooter, finding the next piece of equipment to give you a boost is super important. I mean, it's pretty much half the name of the genre. So when people were unhappy with Anthem's loot system, I knew it was going to be a focus for BioWare. Their update's pretty impressive in my opinion, and it starts with them making the loot more frequent and more viable across the board. They're also adding methods of going after specific loot to perfect your build, as well as the ability to re-roll the bonuses on your gear and level them up. There will be loot tables and specific vendors to go to instead of all the loot being totally random. Additionally, the loot will be more balanced and reliable, using what they're calling a budget to assign the bonuses to the gear and eliminating the issue of previously must-have bonuses. The example given is one that was a bonus to plus 225% damage, which obviously is huge and something that you would want on every single one of your favorite weapons. That shouldn't be a thing anymore. Should feel more balanced. Going along with that is an improvement to the scaling of weapons and loot you get, and an increase in their data collection in order to better identify the need for balance changes as necessary. And lastly is maybe the most important change. You'll now be able to see and equip new loot right away, whereas before it was a trip back to the hub to change your loadout. I think this update is kind of a lot, and it's actually a good sign of their attempt at salvaging what I think should have been a good game. Everyone that I've seen that's tried it said it was a cool game and that the base of it is fun, but it was lacking overall and contained some serious game design flaws, including the loot system. So it's a start, and I think we should be optimistic about what they'll do next, but I don't know that they're going to be able to regain the player base they were hoping for. We'll see once they release that inevitable revamp, but I really hope that EA doesn't do something to kill this before we get to that point. The last topic today is on the Nintendo leaks. About a week ago, there was a dump of Nintendo information that was posted on 4chan, and everyone's calling it the Giga Leak due to the amount of information. The leak mainly surrounds the SNES and N64 era and contains some new info about the development of many games, as well as straight-up source code for prototype versions of some of these games. I think it's one of the largest leaks in video game history and certainly provides tons of information for people that want to archive this type of data, as well as people who consider themselves to be video game historians. It can be a pretty important look at how many of these games were put together and the iterations required to create the games that we have today. While it's not been directly confirmed by Nintendo, much of what we've seen really could have only come from them. I don't know who else would have anything like this. And I think it's too much for people to really be saying is all made up. Some of the information out there has definitely been deconfirmed. This is the perfect time for people who want to fake everyone out to put something up and claim it's from the leak. But right now, there is a lot of information that has been confirmed to come from this leak source. One of the only true confirmations I've seen is from Dylan Cuthbert, a developer who worked on Star Fox 2. Dylan responded to a screenshot of a tool that he said he made to generate messages for the game. So at least some of this is coming from a credible source at least. But probably the biggest thing that everyone has been talking about is the existence of Luigi in an earlier build of Super Mario 64, which had been rumored for quite some time. Some other cool stuff includes unused sprites for Pokemon, unused characters for Star Fox 2, uncompressed voice samples from various games, and even a prototype for an unreleased game that was codenamed Super Donkey, which looks pretty interesting. If you like Nintendo, this is huge, and there are tons of interesting things to go check out. Unfortunately, there isn't really a great place to go and just take a look at literally everything that people have found. This is kind of a community effort to work through all the data, and some of it requires actually compiling source code or scouring through tons of files to see what's there. Everything isn't just labeled, ooh, check this out, this is an uncompressed voice file. So it's going to take some work. But you can easily search up some of this and find lists to see some of what people have put together as interesting. I do think this is all really cool, but the unfortunate side of this is that the data should probably not have gotten out and will likely result in tighter security for Nintendo. I can only speculate, but they would definitely see this as a loss of their IP. It's one thing for them to put information out there about these games, but to have the original source code files leaked is quite another thing. There are also many emails in the files which contain personally identifiable information of some of the employees, which is not good. Regardless of how old some of that is still considered doxing and is pretty bad for a lot of these people. My question is how this information was leaked in the first place, and I don't know if Nintendo knows, but if they don't, that's a big issue. I would find it hard to believe that all of this was just sitting on a server available for hackers to scrape. I mean, it's totally possible, but it seems strange that they would be able to get this variety of information easily. Now, I'm sure we'll probably never know, and Nintendo's not going to be able to scrub all this from the internet. So for now, I think we should just enjoy it for what it is, and hope they don't come after whoever leaked it in the first place. Go check it out. I'm sure there's something there that'll catch your interest. Debuff is hosted by me, Steve Skeels, edited and mixed by Mason Carlton. Follow us on Instagram at DebuffPod. That's DebuffPod. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.